Ha! All right, so we're doing Boston today. So Boston, for their extreme music scene at least, is most well known for their hardcore punk music. And while I am interested in that, and you know what, stick around to the end. I'll give you my top 6 explicitly Boston hardcore releases. But this one, we're going to be talking about the Boston sludge sound. Now, you may think of New Orleans more for their sludge sound, because there is definitely a lot of that ilk down there, and famous ones, and high quality ones. Acid Bath, for whatever reason, has got a resurgence in the last year. But even classic, I Hate God, probably the first sludge band I ever heard, honestly. Yeah, it would be. Another example. But we're not talking about New Orleans. We're talking about Boston. In New England, Boston has I guess an attitude, you could say. At least there's a stereotype. They're tough guys.
Dude, you're always saying, oh, it's because I'm a Gemini, all right? But I'm a Sagittarius, and you don't see me complain.
Don't come at me with that energy, bro. Mercury's about to be in retrograde, bro. Don't even stop.
Yo, are you serious with that jersey right now?
Whatever. They're bad drivers. That much I can tell you. Now, one of the most important Bostonian bands, when discussing both the Boston hardcore scene in general and sludge music in general, is Siege. Now, that was back in '84, something like that. And while Siege is definitely more of a thrashcore, they came from a hardcore scene, as sludge did as well, and they had elements in their music which would become sludge music as well. But it didn't all start out so hard and heavy. Now, this band, you may don't turn it off yet if you disagree with this band being on here. The styles will change, and you'll see why. You probably know them as Dinosaur Jr., but they were known as Dinosaur on their initial release. And you know what? Just check it out. So what'd you think? For the longest time, I just kind of dismissed them as something maybe similar to the Pixies. And while there are some instances of how I could see fans could be of both of those bands easily, I believe what Dinosaur Jr. was doing kind of laid the foundation for this style of music. And like I said, the Pixies influence, and even Dinosaur Jr. were influences on what was going on in their heavy music scene, which became grunge. But I would argue it could have easily become a type of sludge scene if just some of the influences were tweaked slightly different at the beginning. There are a lot of similarities between sludge and grunge, to these ears at least, together. I'm talking about the sludge music scene. And I don't mean that molasses spill, and I don't even mean the Charles River. But the one I'm going to talk about now is a newer band, Adolf Satan. Yeah, Seth kind of had a way of naming bands. He had that VJ band also. But Adolf Satan also had a member of Kill Slug in it. Kill Slug I'll be talking about in a minute, but they're very important. Adolf Satan, while a 2000s band, they definitely fit the bill. Check it out. All right, back to a more classic example of this sound would be Grief. I actually bought this one the year it came out. I was already a fan of I Hate God, as I mentioned earlier, and I'd seen Grief mentioned in tandem with EHG numerous times, so just by default, I purchased Come to Grief here. Give it a listen. All right, another example of this very incestuous scene. We have AC, Kill Slug, once again meeting up, but also with a member of Dinosaur Jr., Upside Down Cross. Now, do you remember that band I introduced you to? I think it was in my US Death Metal episode 4, Doom Snake Cult. Of course you remember it. That was a classic episode. If you forgot and you need to bone up, watch it again. I would say this band, Upside Down Cross, is probably most similar. It combines elements of all those bands who the members belong to also, plus Doom Snake Cult. Probably the best way of describing it. Just listen. Let me know what you think. As I stated, of course they're on the list. This is the seminal band for the sound here. Check this out. Oh, right, and with by far my favorite of this style from this place and time and all that jazz, Nightstick. Now, this particular album is by far my favorite, though I do definitely check out their entire catalog. As I was mentioning, the parallels between what was going on the opposite coast there, I would say this most compares to what the Melvins were doing at the time. You know what? I will do a video on the Seattle scene, and it will be on grunge, but it'll be the lesser known, maybe the heavier grunge type of bands that didn't reach that level of acclaim for whatever reason. No Nirvanas or Alice in Chains or Soundgardens or nothing of that. Anywho, Nightstick is the one that you're going to check out right now. Alright, so what do you think of that? Pretty damn fucking heavy stuff, right? Good stuff. Now, I don't know. Do you think it all goes together? Does all that make sense? Do you see the similarities between what was going on in Boston and New Orleans and those California bands, how they influenced all this? Does it make sense? I don't know. But I do know I do like that Boston hardcore sound. I did promise you my top 6 Boston hardcore releases. I'm going to kind of do this off the cuff. Got an idea, penciled some things down. Start out classic. SSD Control. This was some, definitely took some influences from the Washington, D.C. hardcore sound, imagery, and kind of that straight edge mentality with the veganism and whatnot. Check it out. Now, I do want to mention SSD did actually change into a heavy metal band midway through the 80s, as so many hardcore bands did on both sides of the pond there. The next band, another classic band, is Negative Effects. It's actually where NoFX got their name from, who became much more popular, but I don't give a shit about them. Negative Effects is another one of those straight edge bands. It was a style at the time. DYS. This is some more of that fits right in there. They got that youth crew stuff going on that, I don't know, who influenced who? Did the New York hardcore scene influence Boston or vice versa? They were kind of at odds with each other sometimes, but then there were other times, like when they'd have a show, they'd always invite one band from like outside the area to play there. I don't know, to show that camaraderie or I don't know, maybe it was intimidation. I don't really know enough about hardcore music to be speaking of beyond just what I like. Now this one is more of that straight edge stuff, which is kind of strange. Are there any sober Bruins fans? This is from the hardcore revival from the 90s. A lot of deep ties to the 80s. Like, this is true stuff, held in high regard. This is like a part of that youth crew revival that came out in the 90s. This is more my era. A little bit on the thrashier side, not quite fully hardcore, is Wrecking Crew. And now I can totally understand why two different bands could have the same name, because Wrecking Crew is a name I came up with for a band when I was a wee one, and I certainly wasn't copying off anyone. So watch my series on bands with similar or identical names. You'll be in the elite, obviously. Look how many views are in there. You'll be one of the few that get that information. How's that? All right, I took it on the road. I'm actually here at the studio where Gangrene recorded Older Budweiser. That's their third, their best, and their heaviest album. Now, this was kind of a contrast to what else was going on in the hardcore scene with all that straight edge. This was partying, boozing. After this album, the two brothers actually left the band and formed a kind of a glamish hard rock band called Mallet Head. It had other Bostonian punk people in it as well. Kind of a strange diversion. Another guy actually went into the Mighty Mighty Boss Tones, which I'm not going to talk about. But I think that divergence that was happening about that time in the early 90s was due to just kind of boring of that typical hardcore scene. The sound kind of started to change at that time. And that kind of led into the metalcore scene, which is kind of bleh. So as I do, I like to give you 3 top 6 lists. Now, because of the dominance of that hardcore music in Boston, there was not really much thrash, pure thrash. There was some crossover style thrash, and I think that led to the birth of the metalcore scene in the area with bands like Converge and Overcast, which I guess are okay, but that quickly turned into the ick, like Kill Switch, Shadows Fall, all that remained, all that. They were combining the worst kind of death metal with the worst kind of metalcore, and I don't know, they made melodic metalcore, and then a few years later they combined even worse kind of death metal, slam, to make death. I don't know. I have to admit, I'm so far out of touch with any of that stuff. I've tried. I just don't like it. So my point is, you're not going to find in my videos me covering any of that stuff. I don't know anything about it. I've tried, don't like it. But this is going to be top 6 legit thrash releases from the Boston area. And you probably know some of these already. If you watched it this far, you must be interested in this topic. But the 80s metalcore, the term was more applied to what we would call crossover. Sometimes the harder hardcore music got that term metalcore also. It's very different from what we contemporaneously call metalcore nowadays. But if you're watching this, you probably already know that. All right, so I'm back from my travels. So on the drive home, I was thinking of what these 6 could be. Definitely Only Living Witness. This was the first one of this style that I had heard from this time and place. This was back when Century Media had that deal. I think it was like 12 random CDs at like $20 or some crazy discounted price like that. So I did that a few times and got a wide variety of bands I would have never checked out before. Things like The Business or Christian Death. And I'm very glad I had opportunity to get that music so cheaply back in the day, because that opened up myself to a wide array of music that I probably would have limited myself to just metal and extreme metal by that point. So yeah, Only Living Witness is more of a crossover thrash. And leaning more into that incestuous scene, Executioner. This was actually, I believe, Seth Putnam's first band, though he wasn't on this album. This is the reason that Obituary had to change their name from Executioner, actually, because this band existed before. Another band from this area that had a celebrity in it, Malaya Rage, 𝚑𝚘𝚅𝚘𝚑 was in this band back in the 90s. Now this band is unique in the sense that they were never a crossover style at all. In fact, they played more of a progressive heavy metal maybe sometimes technical style of thrash metal. And they continue to this day and have had very little variation. If you like that style, this is a band for you to check out.
Your last breath now. 'Cause it's the end. Feel the hand of doom, take control now.
All right, this one might be pushing the limits of what is Boston. This is way out in Westfield. Outpatients. I actually dated a girl that lived out there. I don't know if you watch these, Jess, but hi. This is definitely more in that crossover. There's some hardcore influences here. Very catchy stuff. Don't know why I had only recently learned of this band. If you don't know them, check it out. Fun, catchy stuff, like in that, like that Exodus Anthrax way. Totally would have been what I would have been interested in when I first got into thrash metal so many years ago. Next one that, for whatever reason, it took me for years to learn about. Another one I should have known about way back in the day is Wargasm. This is probably the closest thrash metal band to sounding like Overkill, who is my by far favorite thrash metal band of all time. Very solid stuff. If you don't know Wargasm, I mean, I can't fault you. I didn't know Wargasm. You can fault me thinking I should have known that before. Check this out. It's awesome. All right, I honestly think this is probably the ideal album to end this on. This is from '86, a band called Postmortem. Another one I didn't know about until semi-recently, like past 5 years or so, post-COVID. I can use that as kind of a before and after, like I did with 9/11 before, but now it's COVID. Coroner's Office is the name of this album, and it combines hardcore, crossover. It's got sludge in it. It's got crust, grind. This is some damn good stuff. You know what? I'm just going to end the video on this song because I think that's enough. Check it out.
Guilty conscience froze my soul. I did nothing. My mind's controlled by someone.